Maya Brooks stood in the middle of the crystal room on Station Kepler 9. All around her, strange alien creatures watched and whispered. Some had 6 arms. Others had feathers instead of hair. A few glowed with their own light. But all of them were looking at her with the same expression. They thought she was going to fail. The human woman was not very tall, but she stood straight and confident. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple tie. She wore old tactical gear that had seen many missions. There were repair patches on the shoulders and knees. Her boots were scuffed from walking on dozens of different worlds. She looked exactly like what she was, a hunter who spent more time in the field than in fancy stations. Ambassador Vex Thor stepped forward on his 6 legs. He was from a species called the chitin. His body looked like it was made of dark red armor plates. When he spoke, his mouth parts clicked together in a way that made Maya think of insects back on Earth. He seemed amused by her presence here. "You cannot be serious, human," Vex Thor said. His voice came out strange because of how his mouth worked. "These creatures are not simple animals. They have killed the best hunters in the galaxy. They are living nightmares." Maya looked at the hologram floating between them. It showed 5 different creatures. Each one looked more dangerous than the last. She had been studying them for weeks ever since this challenge was first proposed. She knew their hunting patterns. She knew what they ate. She knew how they killed. The first creature was called the Void Serpent. It lived on a frozen planet called Arcturus Prime. The serpent could move through solid ice like it was water. It generated electromagnetic fields that destroyed electronic equipment. 12 hunting parties had tried to kill it. None had succeeded. The second was the Crimson Leviathan. This massive beast swam through seas of liquid methane on a moon called Titan 7. It was bigger than most spaceships. Its armor could withstand pressures that would crush steel. It had destroyed mining operations and research stations. The third creature was the Phase Hunter. This one lived in quantum forests on a world called Nebula's Edge. The Phase Hunter existed in multiple places at the same time. By the time you saw it, you were already dead in several possible futures. Scientists still did not understand how it worked. The fourth was the Slag Behemoth. It swam through rivers of molten lava on a volcanic hell world named Infernus. Some people believed it was billions of years old. Nothing seemed able to kill it. Weapons melted before they could reach it. Explosives did nothing to its rocky hide. The last creature was the Storm Wraith. It lived in the storms of a gas giant planet called Tempest 9. The Wraith was made of lightning and wind. It moved faster than ships could track. No one had ever even gotten close enough to take a clear picture of it. "The rules are simple," Vex Thor continued. He seemed to enjoy explaining how impossible this was. "You have from Friday evening until Monday morning. That gives you 72 hours in Galactic Standard Time. You must hunt all 5 creatures. You must bring back proof that you killed them. If you succeed, humanity gets full voting rights in the Galactic Council. If you fail, your species remains as observers only. No vote, no real power." Maya heard Captain Dennis Morgan's voice in her earpiece. He was watching this from Earth through a holographic connection. "Maya, you do not have to accept this. They designed this challenge to embarrass us. They want you to fail. They want to prove humans are not ready to be equals in the Council." But Maya had already made her decision weeks ago. She had spent her entire adult life studying dangerous animals on alien worlds. She had tracked predators that other species would not go near. She had survived situations that killed entire research teams. Not because she had better weapons or better technology. She survived because she understood how predators think. She knew how to be patient. She knew how to watch and wait for the perfect moment. "I accept the challenge," Maya said. Her voice was calm and clear. The crystal chamber exploded with noise. Aliens made sounds she could not identify. Some seemed worried for her. Others seemed happy that she was going to attempt something so dangerous. They wanted to see a human fail. It would prove they were right to keep humanity as minor members of the galactic community. Commander Kyle Patterson appeared next to her as a small hologram projected from her wrist device. Kyle was her oldest friend and the pilot of their ship. He had flown her to 100 different worlds. They had been through dangerous situations together many times. "The Swift Arrow is ready," he said. "I have loaded every piece of information we have on these creatures. Medical bay is fully stocked. I even packed extra rations in case we get delayed." "What weapons will you require?" asked Delegate Shara. She was from a species that looked like large birds with brilliant blue and green feathers. She was one of the few aliens who had supported humanity's request for full council membership. Her head feathers were laying flat against her skull. In her species, that meant she was worried. Maya smiled just a little. I already have everything I need. Standard hunting loadout. This caused more surprised noises from the crowd. Standard human hunting gear was primitive by galactic standards. Most alien hunters used energy shields that could stop projectiles. They used plasma weapons that could burn through armor. They used artificial intelligence systems to track prey and predict movement patterns. Maya used bullets. She used metal blades. She used simple electronic trackers. To most of the galaxy, human hunting equipment looked like it belonged in a museum. She will be dead before sunset on the first world, someone in the crowd muttered. The alien speaking had a translator device, so Maya heard the words in English. Maybe that is the whole point, Kyle whispered through their private communication channel. Maybe they want to make an example of you. Show everyone what happens when humans get too ambitious. Maya ignored the whispers and focused on the holographic displays. She studied every detail about the 5 creatures. Each one had evolved on a death world where only the strongest survived. Each one was an apex predator with millions of years of evolution, making it perfect at killing. Each one had ended the careers of famous hunters from species that had been exploring space for thousands of years before. Humans even invented the wheel. But they had never faced a human who grew up hunting deer in the forests of Montana. They had never met someone who learned patience from her grandfather during week-long tracking trips. They had never encountered a hunter who studied animal behavior the way Maya did, learning to think like the predator she was tracking. The time begins in 1 hour, Ambassador Vexthor announced. May fortune smile upon you, human. You will need it. Maya picked up her equipment bag. It was heavy with gear, but she lifted it easily. She had carried heavier loads through worse terrain. She walked toward the docking bay where Kyle waited with their ship. As she moved through the crowd of aliens, she felt their eyes on her. Some looked at her with pity, others with curiosity, a few with something that might have been hope. You know the mathematics are not in your favor, right? Kyle said as they reached the Swift Arrow. Their ship was small but fast. It had been modified for quick jumps between systems and could land on almost any type of terrain. Good thing I was never great at math, Maya replied. She strapped herself into the co-pilot seat and began checking her equipment one more time. Her rifle was clean and loaded. Her knives were sharp. Her collection containers were sterile and ready. Everything was prepared. Kyle started the ship's engines. The Swift Arrow hummed to life around them. Where are we going first? Arcturus Prime, Maya said. She pulled up the navigational data on her screen. We need to catch a snake. The ship lifted off from the station and pointed toward the stars. Through the viewport, Maya could see the assembled council members watching them leave. Some of them were already placing bets on how long she would survive. The odds were not good, but Maya had spent her whole life being underestimated. People always assumed that because she was human, because she was young, because she used simple weapons, that she could not compete with the galaxy's best. They were usually surprised when she proved them wrong. This weekend would be no different, except this time the entire galaxy was watching. This time the future of her species depended on her success. Maya closed her eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. Then she opened them and looked at the stars ahead. Somewhere out there, 5 of the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy were waiting. They did not know it yet, but they were being hunted, and Maya Brooks never came back from a hunt empty-handed. The Swift Arrow dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Arcturus system. Immediately, Maya felt the temperature inside the cabin fall. Even with the ship's heating system working at full power, the cold from outside seemed to seep through the walls. Arcturus Prime was one of the coldest planets known to exist. It made the winter in Montana seem like a warm summer day. My instruments are going crazy, Kyle said from the pilot seat. His fingers moved across the holographic controls trying to make sense of the readings. The Void Serpent creates electromagnetic fields that mess with everything electronic. I am getting false readings everywhere. According to these sensors, you are standing in 5 different places at once. Maya studied the planet below them. It was beautiful in a deadly way. The surface was covered in nitrogen ice that sparkled in the light of the distant sun. Mountains made of frozen crystals rose up from the ground, bending the starlight into rainbow patterns. But Maya knew that beauty was dangerous. The temperature down there was minus 200 degrees. A human could freeze solid in minutes without proper protection. Take us down to coordinates 77 Alpha, Maya instructed. She had been studying maps of the planet for days. That is where the last 3 hunting parties lost their members. Kyle looked at her like she was crazy. You want to land in the exact spot where other hunters died? That is supposed to make me feel better? I want to land where the void serpent likes to hunt, Maya explained. If we are going to find it, we need to go where it lives. 20 minutes later, Maya stood on the surface of Arcturus Prime. Her environmental suit was working hard to keep her alive. She could hear the heaters running constantly. The suit's power display showed she had about 6 hours before the batteries would die. 6 hours to find and kill a creature that had defeated some of the galaxy's best hunters. I have placed motion sensors in a circle around the ship. Kyle's voice came through her helmet speaker. But honestly, this thing could be right under your feet and we would not know. The electromagnetic interference is too strong. Maya knelt down and placed her gloved hand against the ice. Even through the thick insulation, she could feel vibrations. They were subtle, like the rumble of distant thunder. Something large was moving through the ice beneath her. The void serpent was down there, somewhere in the network of caves and tunnels that ran through the planet's crust. She had studied every report about this creature. She had watched every video recovered from failed hunts. Most hunters tried to use advanced technology against it. They brought electromagnetic pulse weapons. They brought quantum scanners. They brought artificial intelligence systems to predict its movements. All of that technology failed, because the void serpent itself was a living electromagnetic phenomenon. It disrupted everything electronic that came near it. Maya reached into her pack and pulled out 3 devices that looked very old-fashioned. They were simple chemical explosives in metal containers. No electronics, no computer chips, just chemistry and physics that humans had understood for hundreds of years. The kind of explosives that would have worked just as well in the year 1900 as they did now. She placed the 3 explosives in a triangle pattern on the ice. Each one was about 50 meters from the others. Then she walked back to a ridge of ice and crouched down behind it. She set the timers on the explosives. These were completely mechanical timers, the kind with gears and springs. They would go off in sequence, creating a specific vibration pattern. You are trying to attract it with explosions? Kyle asked. That seems like a good way to make it angry. I'm not trying to make it angry, Maya said. She checked her rifle one more time. It was a simple weapon that used chemical propellant to fire solid projectiles. No lasers, no plasma. Just metal bullets pushed by gunpowder. I am trying to make it curious. The first explosive went off. A plume of ice crystals shot into the air. The vibration traveled through the ground. Then the second explosive detonated. Then the third. The vibrations created a pattern, a rhythm that traveled through the crystalline ice and amplified as it went. Maya had studied the void serpent's mating behavior. The males of the species created vibration patterns to attract females. She had designed her explosive sequence to mimic that pattern. It was a guess based on incomplete data, but it was the best idea she had. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Maya kept her breathing slow and steady. Her grandfather had taught her that patience was the most important skill for any hunter. You could have the best weapon in the world, but it meant nothing if you could not wait for the right moment. Then the ice in the center of the triangle began to glow. A cold blue light came from beneath the surface. The temperature dropped even further. Maya's suit alarm started beeping warnings at her. She reached up and turned them off manually. She needed to focus, and the beeping was distracting. The void serpent rose from the ice like a ghost becoming solid. It was enormous, at least 50 meters long. Its body seemed to be made of crystallized energy wrapped in scales that kept appearing and disappearing. Sometimes Maya could see right through it. Other times it looked completely solid. The serpent's head was covered in organs that pulsed with the same blue light that now filled the area around them. Maya held completely still. The creature was scanning the area, looking for whatever had made the vibrations. It thought it might find a mate. Instead, it would find something it had never encountered before. A human hunter who understood that the best weapon was often the simplest one. The void serpent coiled its body, moving in a way that made Maya's eyes hurt to watch. It existed partially in normal space and partially in some other dimension that her brain could not quite process. As it moved, its neck extended, and for just a moment the scales behind its head separated slightly. There. That was the spot. Every creature, no matter how strange or powerful, had a central nervous system. In the void serpent, it was located just behind the head. The spot was protected by overlapping scales most of the time. But when the creature turned its head in certain ways, there was a gap. Maya had been waiting for this moment. She had studied the videos. She had calculated the angles. She knew exactly when that gap would appear. Now she just needed to take the shot. She squeezed the trigger 3 times. The rifle made a simple mechanical sound, nothing like the whine of energy weapons. 3 bullets left the barrel at supersonic speed. The first 2 hit the scales and punched through them, weakening the armor. The third bullet went through the gap and into the neural cluster beneath. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Void Serpent's electromagnetic field went completely out of control. Lightning started arcing across the ice in every direction. The blue light became blinding. Maya pressed herself flat against the ice ridge as bolts of energy passed overhead. Her suit's grounding systems were barely enough to protect her. She could smell something burning and hoped it was not something important. The serpent thrashed and twisted. Its body carved trenches in the ice. The electromagnetic storm it created was visible from space. For 15 seconds, it looked like a war was happening on the surface of Arcturus Prime. Then suddenly everything went quiet. The Void Serpent lay still on the ice. The blue light faded away. Steam rose from its body as the extreme cold began to affect it. "Maya, are you alive?" Your suit telemetry went crazy. Kyle's voice was loud with worry. "I'm okay," Maya said. She stood up slowly, checking herself for damage. Her suit had some scorch marks but was still functioning. "The serpent is dead." She approached the creature carefully. Even dead, it was impressive. She pulled out her collection kit and began taking tissue samples. The Galactic Council would want proof, and she needed to get samples before the body started to decay in the extreme cold. As she worked, Maya allowed herself a small moment of satisfaction. 1 creature down, 4 more to go, but as she looked at her chronometer, she saw that 3 hours had passed since they left the station. That included travel time, but still, she had 69 hours left to hunt 4 more creatures. Back on the Swift Arrow, Maya stripped out of her frozen suit. Ice had formed on parts of it despite the heaters. Her muscles ached from the tension of the hunt. Kyle handed her a hot drink and looked at her with an expression that was part admiration and part concern. "That was incredible," he said. "But you know the next ones are supposed to be even harder, right?" "I know," Maya said. She sat down and pulled up the data on the Crimson Leviathan. "How long until we reach Titan 7? Kyle checked the navigation computer. "About 4 hours if we push the engines. Then I have 4 hours to rest and plan," Maya said. She closed her eyes and leaned back in her seat. Her body needed rest, but her mind was already working on the next hunt. The Crimson Leviathan lived in seas of liquid methane. It was bigger than most buildings. It had crushed submarines made of the strongest materials in the galaxy. But it had never met Maya Brooks. She thought about her grandfather, who had taught her to hunt when she was just a child. He always said that size did not matter. Speed did not matter. Strength did not matter. What mattered was understanding the animal, understanding what it wanted, understanding how it thought. The Crimson Leviathan was big and strong, but it was still just an animal. It had patterns. It had behaviors. It had weaknesses. Maya just needed to. The methane seas of Titan 7 stretched out before Maya like an alien ocean. The liquid was not blue like water on Earth. Instead, it was a deep red-orange color, reflecting the light from the red giant star that dominated the sky. Waves of liquid methane rolled across the surface, slow and thick, nothing like the water waves Maya had seen back home. She stood on the deck of a small submersible vessel that they had rented from a mining station in orbit. The vessel was designed to handle the methane environment, but it was not built for hunting giant monsters. Kyle was back on the Swift Arrow, maintaining orbit and monitoring everything from above. "I really do not like this plan," Kyle said through the communication system. "The Crimson Leviathan is the size of a large building, Maya. It has crushed submarines that were 10 times stronger than that little boat you are standing on." Maya was checking the seals on her diving suit. This suit was different from the one she had worn on Arcturus Prime. It was designed to handle extreme pressure and chemical exposure. The methane seas of Titan 7 were not just cold, they were also corrosive and incredibly deep. "That is why I'm not staying in the boat," she said. She had spent the travel time studying everything about the Crimson Leviathan. The creature was massive, yes. It was aggressive, yes. But it was not actually a predator in the traditional sense. The Leviathan was a filter feeder. It swam through dense clouds of microscopic organisms with its mouth open, consuming millions of them at a time. The reason it attacked ships and submarines was not because it wanted to eat them. It attacked because they entered its territory. This was important. It meant the Leviathan was predictable. It followed the same feeding routes through the methane seas, following currents that carried high concentrations of the microorganisms it ate. And Maya had identified something else in the data. The Leviathan made regular stops at volcanic vents on the seafloor. It would pause at these warm spots to bask, like a lizard sunning itself on a rock. "I am sending the submersible away on autopilot," Maya explained as she prepared to enter the methane sea. "It will draw the Leviathan's attention if it comes near. Meanwhile, I will be waiting at one of the volcanic vents." "And when this mountain-sized monster shows up?" Kyle asked. His voice sounded strained. He hated when Maya did the really dangerous hunts. "Then I will kill it," Maya said simply. She activated her propulsion pack, which was basically an underwater jet engine that ran on compressed gas. Then she rolled backward off the submersible and into the methane. The world changed instantly. Everything became dark red and murky. Visibility was terrible. Maya turned on her suit lights, and strange organisms scattered away from the beams. They glowed with their own light, drifting through the liquid methane like stars in a liquid sky. Under different circumstances, it would have been beautiful. But Maya was not here for sightseeing. She checked her navigation system and started swimming toward the nearest volcanic vent. The propulsion pack helped her move through the thick liquid, but it was still hard work. The methane was much denser than water. It felt like swimming through syrup. The pressure increased with every meter she descended. Her suit creaked and groaned as the methane pressed in from all sides. The pressure gauge on her wrist showed readings that would have crushed an unprotected human instantly. Maya had to constantly equalize the pressure in her ears and sinuses to prevent damage. It took 40 minutes to reach the volcanic vent. Maya could see it from a distance because it glowed with heat. Superheated methane was boiling up from cracks in the seafloor. The temperature around the vent was much higher than the surrounding environment, though still cold by human standards. Maya positioned herself on a rocky outcropping above the vent, using adhesive anchors to secure her position. Then she waited. Waiting was the hardest part of any hunt. It was boring. It was uncomfortable. The methane sea was dark and alien and hostile. Maya's suit heaters were working constantly to keep her from freezing. Her oxygen supply was limited. Every minute she waited was a minute closer to running out of air. But her grandfather had taught her that impatience killed more hunters than any dangerous animal. You had to wait for the right moment. You had to let the animal come to you. Chasing it would only warn it and tire you out. 1 hour passed. Then another. Maya's muscles started to ache from holding still in the same position. Her suit's oxygen indicator showed she had maybe 2 more hours of breathable air. If the Leviathan did not show up soon, she would have to abort and try again later. But that would waste precious time. Then she felt it. A pressure wave moving through the methane so strong it made her teeth rattle. Something enormous was approaching. The Leviathan was coming. Maya's heart started beating faster, but she forced herself to remain calm. She needed to conserve oxygen. She needed to stay focused. Through the murky red methane, she began to see a shape. At first, it was just a darker shadow in the darkness. Then it grew larger, and larger, and larger. Nothing could have prepared her for the reality of seeing the Crimson Leviathan up close. It was beyond massive. It was like watching a mountain move underwater. The creature's body was covered in overlapping plates of organic armor that glowed faintly with internal bioluminescence. Its mouth was a cavern big enough to swallow the swift arrow whole. The mouth was filled with baleen-like filters instead of teeth, but that somehow made it more terrifying rather than less. The Leviathan approached the volcanic vent and settled near it. Its enormous body created currents in the methane that threatened to tear Maya from her anchored position. She held on tight, her muscles screaming with effort. The creature was so close now that she could see individual scales on its armor. Each scale was bigger than her entire body. Maya watched and waited. She had studied the anatomy of the Leviathan from the few dissections that had been done on much smaller relatives of the species. She knew there was a seam in the armor plating directly over the primary circulatory organ, what humans would call a heart. But hitting that spot would require perfect timing and perfect aim. The Leviathan settled into position, its massive body relaxing in the warmth from the volcanic vent. The armor plates shifted slightly as the creature breathed, if breathing was the right word for what it was doing. Maya could see the seam she needed. It was there right in front of her, protected by overlapping plates that moved with each breath cycle. Slowly, carefully, Maya reached for the weapon she had prepared specifically for this hunt. It was not a gun or a harpoon. It was a shaped explosive charge, designed to focus all its energy in a single direction like a cutting torch. She had calculated exactly how much explosive force would be needed to penetrate the Leviathan's armor. The charge had a magnetic clamp on one side. Maya would need to attach it directly to the creature's armor, right over the seam. Then she would have exactly 3 seconds to get away before it detonated. She watched the Leviathan's breathing cycle. The armor plates separated slightly with each breath. There was a rhythm to it. She counted the seconds between each breath. 4 seconds in, 2 seconds held, 4 seconds out, 2 seconds pause, then repeat. Maya timed her move for the pause between breaths. She released her anchors and fired her propulsion pack at maximum power, shooting directly toward the Leviathan's flank. The distance was only about 10 meters, but it felt like flying toward a cliff face. The magnetic clamp hit the armor plate and seized hold with a solid thunk that Maya felt rather than heard. 3 seconds. Maya fired her propulsion pack again, reversing course at maximum thrust. The methane fought her, thick and resistant. Behind her, the timer on the explosive was counting down. 2 seconds. She was not moving fast enough. The propulsion pack was straining at full power, but the dense methane was like flying through mud. 1 second. The explosion was muffled by the liquid methane, but the shockwave hit Maya like a physical blow. She tumbled through the water, unable to control her direction. Her vision went blurry. Alarm sounds filled her helmet as the suit's integrity was compromised. She tasted blood in her mouth. When her vision cleared, she saw the crimson Leviathan thrashing in its death throes. There was a massive wound in its side where the shaped charge had focused its energy like a spear of force. The creature's internal fluids were mixing with the methane, creating clouds of strange colors. The Leviathan's movements were violent and uncontrolled, churning the methane sea into chaos. But Maya had a more immediate problem. Her suit was damaged. She could feel the pressure increasing as methane leaked through compromised seals. The oxygen indicator was flashing red. She had minutes at best before the suit failed completely. She swam toward the dying Leviathan, fighting through waves of pain and disorientation. She needed a tissue sample. That was the proof the council required. Her hands were shaking as she pulled out the emergency collection tool, basically a hollow tube with sharp edges. She stabbed it into the Leviathan's exposed flesh and twisted, extracting a core sample. The container sealed automatically, protecting the sample. Maya, your suit telemetry just went crazy. What is happening? Kyle's voice sounded far away and distorted. Got it, Maya managed to say. Her words were slurred. Need extraction now. She activated her emergency beacon. The submersible's automated systems responded immediately, calculating her position, and the quantum forests of Nebula's edge were impossible to describe properly. Maya stood at the edge of the forest, trying to make her brain understand what her eyes were seeing. The trees, if they could be called trees, existed in multiple states at the same time. One moment she saw a tall plant with purple leaves. The next moment the same tree was short with silver bark. Sometimes the trees looked solid. Other times they seemed to be made of probability clouds, there and not there at the same moment. This place is breaking my instruments, Kyle said from the swift arrow. His voice sounded frustrated. According to my sensors, you are standing in 17 different locations at once. Also, you are both alive and dead. Also, time is moving forward and backward simultaneously. None of this makes any sense. Maya felt sick to her stomach. The quantum instability was affecting her body. Her inner ear could not decide which way was up. She had taken medication to help, but it was only partially working. How does anything survive here? She asked. According to the research data, most things do not survive here, Kyle replied. The few life forms that exist have evolved to handle the quantum instability. Everything else dies or goes insane. The phase hunter was the ultimate predator of this strange environment. It had evolved to exist in quantum superposition naturally. While other creatures struggled with the constantly shifting reality, the phase hunter thrived in it. It could be in multiple places at once, attacking from several directions simultaneously. By the time its prey realized they were being hunted, they were already dead in several possible timelines. Previous hunters had tried every technological solution they could think of, quantum stabilizing fields to force the creature into a single location, probability mapping computers to predict where it would appear, weapons that could hit multiple timelines at once. Nothing worked. The phase hunter simply moved through the quantum foam like a fish through water, and all the technology in the galaxy could not touch it. Maya had spent hours thinking about this problem. She had studied quantum mechanics until her head hurt. She had read papers by scientists who had spent their entire careers trying to understand this place, and she had reached a conclusion. You could not beat the phase hunter by trying to force it to play by normal rules. You had to play by its rules instead, which was why she was about to do something incredibly dangerous. She pulled out a small device from her pack. It looked like a metal band with several electronic components attached. This was a consciousness expansion module, a piece of technology that was illegal in most civilized systems. The device would alter her brain chemistry and neural patterns, allowing her to perceive and process quantum probability in real time. People who used these devices sometimes came back changed. Their minds would get stuck thinking in probabilities instead of certainties. They would see every possible outcome of every action, unable to focus on the single timeline they actually lived in. Some went insane. Others simply stopped being able to function in normal society. But it was the only way Maya could think of to hunt a creature that existed in quantum superposition. "You are really going to use that thing?" Kyle asked when she told him the plan. "Maya, people who use those devices do not always come back normal. Your mind could get stuck seeing multiple timelines." "I will take that risk," Maya had said, and she had meant it. Now standing at the edge of the quantum forest, Maya placed the device on her temple and activated it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the world exploded. Suddenly, Maya could see everything. Every possible path, every probability, every potential outcome. The forest was not just shifting randomly. It was existing in all possible states simultaneously, and her enhanced consciousness could perceive all of them at once. She saw the tree in front of her as it was, as it had been, as it could be, as it might never be. All at the same time. It was overwhelming, beautiful, terrifying. Maya felt like her mind was being stretched across infinite space. She existed in multiple states now, just like everything else in this forest. She was here. She was there. She was everywhere and nowhere. And there, moving through the probabilities like a predator through tall grass, was the phase hunter. It was magnificent. The creature had no single form. In one probability, it was massive with armored scales. In another, it was small and fast with razor teeth. In a third timeline, it was made of pure energy. It was all of these things and none of them, existing as pure potential until the moment it chose to strike and collapse its wave function into reality. Maya understood now what previous hunters had missed. The phase hunter did not just exist in quantum superposition. It fed on quantum probability. It consumed the life energy of other creatures by collapsing their probability waves prematurely. It killed them in multiple timelines at once, making them exist as dead before they had actually finished dying. To kill the phase hunter, Maya would need to do the same thing to it. She would need to force its infinite possibilities into a single finite state, and then she would need to end that state permanently. She reached into her pack and pulled out a device she had built based on theoretical physics papers that most scientists said were impossible. It was a quantum wave function collapser. The device could force probability into a single state, making the possible become actual. Using it on a living creature would be an act of violence at the most fundamental level of reality. But first, she needed to get the phase hunter's attention. Maya began walking through the forest. She moved deliberately, creating ripples in the quantum probability field. She made herself look vulnerable, uncertain, unstable. To a quantum predator, she would seem like an easy meal. The phase hunter noticed. Maya could see it in the branching timelines. Probabilities began to converge as the creature focused its attention on her. It started stalking her through multiple quantum states, preparing to collapse her wave function and feed on her dying energy. Maya let it get close, closer. She could feel the creature now, a weight on reality itself. In 17 different timelines, she was already dead. In 33 timelines, she was dying. In 41 timelines, she had never existed at all. But in this timeline, in the single narrow probability where she succeeded, Maya turned and fired the quantum collapser. The effect was immediate and horrible. The phase hunter suddenly existed in only one state. All its infinite possibilities collapsed into a single finite form. The creature screamed, and the sound existed on frequencies Maya could not normally hear but her quantum-enhanced brain could perceive. It was the sound of potential being destroyed, of infinite becoming finite, of freedom becoming prison. The phase hunter thrashed, trying desperately to return to its natural superposition state. Its body flickered between different forms as it fought against the collapser, but Maya held the device steady and fired again, and again. Each pulse forced more of the creature's quantum nature into a single locked state. Finally, with one last pulse, the phase hunter died. It died in every timeline simultaneously. The death rippled backward and forward through time, through probability, through every possible version of reality. The quantum forest itself seemed to shudder. Several of the probability trees around them stopped shifting and locked into single states, traumatized by witnessing such a fundamental violation of quantum law. Maya deactivated the consciousness expansion module. The transition back to normal perception was agonizing. She had seen infinity. She had existed in multiple states at once. Now she was being forced back into a single timeline, a single state, a single limited perception of reality. She fell to her knees and vomited inside her helmet. The world spun around her. Part of her brain still thought in probabilities, still saw ghost images of paths not taken, of timelines not chosen. She could see versions of herself that had died, versions that had succeeded differently, versions that had never come here at all. Maya, your vital signs are going crazy. What is happening? Kyle's voice sounded distant and strange, like it was coming from multiple directions at once. I am okay, Maya managed to say, though she was not sure that was true. Got it. The phase hunter is dead. Her hands were shaking violently as she collected the tissue sample. The phase hunter's corpse was already decaying strangely. Parts of it kept trying to slip back into quantum superposition, now that there was no consciousness maintaining its collapsed state. Maya had to work quickly before the sample became useless. Back on the swift arrow, Kyle took one look at her and insisted she spend time in the medical bay. Maya did not have the energy to argue. Her mind felt fractured. Her thoughts kept branching into probability trees before she could force them to stay linear. 3 down, she whispered, as the medical AI gave her sedatives. 2 more to go. She tried to close her eyes, but when she did, she saw multiple versions of herself. Versions that had died on Arcturus Prime. Versions that had drowned on Titan 7. Versions that had been torn apart by the phase hunter. They were all real in some timeline. They all existed in probability space, and her quantum-enhanced brain could still perceive them. Kyle sat beside her bed, his face creased with worry. Maybe we should stop, he said quietly. You have already done more than anyone expected. 3 out of 5 creatures is incredible. No one would blame you for stopping now. Infernus was a planet that seemed designed to kill everything that came near it. Maya stood on a rock ledge overlooking a river of molten lava, watching liquid stone flow past with slow, hypnotic movement. The heat was incredible even through her protective suit. The air itself shimmered with thermal distortion. One wrong step and she would fall into temperatures hot enough to vaporize human flesh instantly. The slag behemoth should pass through this area in about 2 hours, Kyle reported from orbit. The swift arrow could not get too close to Infernus because the volcanic activity created atmospheric conditions that would damage the ship. Are you sure about this plan? This seems really dangerous even by your standards. Maya checked her equipment one more time. Her heat suit used chemical cooling reactions instead of electronic systems. Everything she carried was designed to function in extreme temperatures. Even so, she knew she could only survive on Infernus for a limited time. The cooling system would eventually be overwhelmed. I am sure, she said. Her body still ached from the previous hunts. The quantum consciousness device had left her with occasional visual distortions, where she would see ghost images of probability paths that did not exist. Her left arm was still weak from the pressure damage on Titan 7. She was running on determination and stimulants at this point, pushing her body past its normal limits. But she was so close, 4 creatures dead. 1 more after this, then just 31 hours remaining on the clock. She could rest when it was over. The slag behemoth was in many ways the most straightforward of the 5 creatures. It was not a quantum anomaly like the phase hunter. It did not have the electromagnetic abilities of the void serpent. It was simply massive, incredibly tough, and it lived in an environment so hostile that most creatures could not even approach it. The behemoth swam through rivers of molten lava like a fish through water. Its body was covered in layers of rock-like armor that could withstand temperatures that would melt titanium. Some scientists believed it was essentially immortal, that it had been alive since Infernus first formed billions of years ago. Previous hunters had tried everything: orbital bombardment from space, drilling underneath the lava flows to plant nuclear explosives, high-powered energy weapons fired from heat-shielded bunkers. Nothing worked. The behemoth survived every attack and then destroyed whatever equipment the hunters had used. But Maya had noticed something in the data that everyone else had missed. The behemoth was not just randomly aggressive. It attacked in response to specific stimuli. Specifically, it attacked anything that disrupted the electromagnetic fields generated by Infernus's magnetic core. Most hunters had used powered equipment that created electromagnetic signatures. Their ships, their weapons, their scanners, all of them produced electronic fields. To the behemoth, they were intruders disrupting the natural electromagnetic environment. So it attacked them. Maya's approach was different. Everything she carried was passive or mechanical. Her heat suit used chemical reactions for cooling. Her weapon used mechanical springs and chemical propellants. Even her timing device was purely clockwork, gears and springs with no electronics at all. To the behemoth's senses, she would be nearly invisible. She positioned herself on a stable rock formation overlooking the lava river and settled in to wait. According to the data from previous observations, the behemoth passed through this section of river every 6 hours. It had maintained this routine for decades. Maya was counting on the fact that even ancient, nearly immortal creatures were slaves to their habits. Waiting was hard. The heat was oppressive. Her suit's cooling system worked constantly, but it could only do so much. Sweat ran down her face and back. Her mouth was dry despite the water reservoir in her suit. The rock she sat on radiated heat like an oven. But Maya had learned patience from her grandfather during those long hunting trips in Montana. Sometimes you sat in a tree stand for 8 hours waiting for a deer. Sometimes you tracked an elk for 3 days before getting a clear shot. Hunting was about patience more than anything else. The ability to stay still and wait for exactly the right moment. 2 hours passed. Maya's suit was starting to struggle with the heat. The chemical coolant was running low. She had maybe another hour before the system would fail, and she would have to retreat or risk heat stroke. Then the lava began to churn. The surface of the molten river started to bubble and heave. Maya felt vibrations through the rock beneath her. Something enormous was approaching from downstream. The slag behemoth rose from the lava like a mountain emerging from the earth. It was huge, at least 60 meters long. Its body was covered in overlapping plates of rock-like material that glowed cherry red from internal heat. As it moved, pieces of cooled rock fell away and new molten material flowed over its surface. The creature's mouth was a cavern lined with what looked like obsidian teeth, though Maya doubted it actually used them for eating. The behemoth probably absorbed nutrients directly from the lava. Maya watched it carefully. The behemoth settled into position in a wider part of the river, basking in the flow of fresh lava. This was its routine. Every 6 hours it would stop here to absorb heat and nutrients before continuing its circuit around the planet. Now came the tricky part. Maya could not hurt this creature directly. Its armor was too thick. Its body could withstand temperatures and pressures that would destroy any weapon she could carry. But she did not need to hurt it directly. She just needed to use the environment against it. Maya had spent hours studying the geological data of this area. The rock face above the behemoth's basking spot was fractured and unstable. Millions of years of thermal stress had weakened the stone. It was held in place by a few key support points. If those support points were destroyed, thousands of tons of cooler rock would collapse onto the behemoth. The plan was simple, but required perfect timing. Maya needed to trigger the collapse when the behemoth was fully exposed and positioned just right. If she miscalculated, the creature would simply swim away before the rocks could trap it. She waited until the behemoth was fully settled. Its massive body relaxed in the lava flow. Then she raised her rifle and aimed at a specific point on the rock face above. She had calculated this shot carefully based on stress analysis and geological surveys. One bullet in exactly the right spot would start a chain reaction. Maya took a slow breath. Let it out halfway. Squeezed the trigger gently. The rifle fired with a sharp crack that was instantly swallowed by the roar of the lava. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a crack appeared in the rock face. It spread rapidly, following existing fracture lines. A low rumbling sound filled the air, growing louder. Chunks of rock began to fall, then larger pieces, then entire sections of the cliff face. The behemoth noticed the disturbance and started to move, but it was too late. Thousands of tons of volcanic rock crashed down onto it, burying it under a massive pile of stone. The falling rock mixed with the lava, creating a chaotic mess of semi-molten material that began to solidify rapidly. More importantly, the collapse created a natural dam that redirected the lava flow away from the behemoth. Without the constant flow of fresh molten rock, the material surrounding the creature began to cool and harden. The behemoth thrashed, trying to swim free, but the cooling rock trapped it like concrete. Maya watched from her perch as the ancient creature fought for survival. It was powerful, incredibly so. The rock around it cracked and shifted as it struggled. But Maya had chosen her spot well. The weight of the collapsed cliff was simply too much, and without the heat of fresh lava, the prison around the behemoth grew stronger with each passing minute. It took 30 minutes, but eventually the thrashing stopped. The slag behemoth, possibly billions of years old, had been killed by simple geology and careful observation. Maya climbed down from her perch carefully. The rocks were hot enough to burn through her gloves if she was not careful. She made her way to the edge of the cooling rock pile and used a diamond-tipped drill to extract a tissue sample. The drill bit overheated twice and she had to let it cool before continuing. But eventually she had what she needed, proof that the behemoth was dead. Her suit's cooling system finally gave up as she was climbing back to safer ground. Alarms blared in her helmet as the internal temperature started to rise. Maya moved as fast as she dared, knowing that one slip would send her into the lava. Her vision started to blur from heat exhaustion. Her legs felt weak. She made it to the extraction point just as Kyle brought a heat-shielded shuttle down to pick her up. The moment she was inside and the airlock sealed, Maya collapsed. The shuttle's cooling system washed over her like a wave of ice water. She lay on the floor gasping for breath while Kyle piloted them back to the Swift Arrow. "That was too close," Kyle said. His voice was tight with stress. "Your core temperature was at dangerous levels. Another 5 minutes and you would have had serious organ damage." "But I did not," Maya managed to say between gasps. "4 down. 1 more. Back on the Swift Arrow." Maya let the medical AI work on her while she reviewed data on the final target, the storm wraith of Tempest 9. This was the creature that no hunter had ever successfully tracked. It lived in the eternal storms of a gas giant, moving at speeds that made it nearly impossible to follow. It was made partially of living lightning. The shuttle shook violently as it descended into the atmosphere of Tempest 9. Maya held onto her seat restraints and watched the viewport as they dropped through layers of multicolored clouds. Each layer seemed to have its own weather system, its own winds, its own violence, and they were heading directly for the worst of it, the Great Eye. "I cannot believe we are doing this," Kyle muttered from the pilot seat. His hands moved across the controls constantly, fighting to keep the shuttle stable. "This is absolutely insane." "We are going to die." "We are not going to die," Maya said. She wished she felt as confident as she sounded. The truth was that this was the most dangerous thing she had attempted all weekend. The other hunts had been difficult, but this one was something else entirely. They were flying into a storm that had been raging for thousands of years, a storm so powerful it could be seen from orbit. The shuttle hit another pocket of turbulence and dropped suddenly. Maya's stomach lurched. Alarms were blaring all around them. The shields were already at 70%, and they were not even close to the worst part yet. "Tell me again why we cannot just shoot this thing from orbit," Kyle asked. "Because the storm wraith is too fast and the atmosphere is too thick," Maya explained. She was checking the modified rifle round that Kyle had prepared. It was a conductive projectile designed to seek out the highest electrical potential. "We need to be close. We need to be in the storm with it." Through the viewport she could see the Great Eye approaching. It was a wall of clouds rotating so fast they seemed to blur together. Lightning arced between cloud layers constantly, some bolts kilometers long. The energy readings on the shuttle's instruments were off the scale. "We are about to enter the outer edge of the storm," Kyle announced. "Last chance to back out." "Keep going," Maya said. The shuttle hit the storm wall and the world exploded into chaos. Wind speeds instantly jumped to hundreds of kilometers per hour. The shuttle was thrown around like a toy. Lightning struck their shields, making the entire cabin light up with electrical discharge. The noise was incredible, a constant roar that made it hard to think. Kyle fought the controls, trying to maintain altitude and heading. Sweat ran down his face. I cannot hold this position for long. The shields are at 40%. Maya unstrapped from her seat and moved to the side door. The quantum distortions in her vision were making everything seem strange. She saw multiple versions of the shuttle, multiple timelines branching out. In some of them, the shuttle was already torn apart. In others, they had fled. But in one narrow probability, they succeeded. What are you doing? Kyle shouted over the storm noise. Getting ready. Maya clipped a safety line to her harness and moved to the door release. I need to be able to take the shot. You are going to open the door? In the middle of this storm? You will be pulled out instantly. That is why I have the safety line. Maya positioned herself and put her hand on the door control. Start scanning for the storm wraith. It will be drawn to our electrical signature. Kyle looked like he wanted to argue more, but instead he focused on the sensors. The instruments were struggling with all the electrical interference. I'm getting something. Large electrical reading moving toward us. It could be just the storm, but his eyes widened. It is accelerating. Whatever it is, it noticed us. Good. Maya checked her rifle one more time. The modified round was loaded and ready. Tell me when it gets close. Through the viewport and the gaps in the clouds, Maya caught glimpses of something moving through the storm. It was hard to see clearly because it was made partially of lightning itself. The storm wraith danced through the electrical currents, riding the energy like a surfer riding waves. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The creature was semi-transparent, its body crackling with captured lightning. It moved through the storm clouds with impossible grace, diving and soaring. It seemed to be made of pure energy given form and purpose. As it approached, Maya could feel the electrical potential in the air increasing. Her hair stood on end despite being inside the shuttle. Static discharges sparked across metal surfaces. It is heading right for us, Kyle yelled. 30 seconds. Maya opened the door. The wind hit her like a physical blow. Even with the safety line, she was nearly pulled out of the shuttle. Rain that was not quite water lashed at her face. The storm was trying to tear her away, to pull her out into the chaos. But Maya held on with strength born of desperation and determination. The storm wraith saw her, saw the open door, saw prey that was vulnerable and exposed. It turned its attention fully toward the shuttle and accelerated. Lightning began to arc directly toward them, drawn to the electrical signature of their ship and equipment. Maya raised her rifle. The wind fought her. Her arms shook from exhaustion and the battering of the storm. The quantum distortions in her vision made it hard to focus. She saw multiple storm wraiths, multiple timelines, multiple possible outcomes. But in one timeline, she succeeded. In one narrow probability, her shot was true. Maya focused on that timeline with everything she had. She became the version of herself that did not miss. The storm wraith opened what might have been a mouth. Lightning began to concentrate around it, building up for a massive discharge that would fry the shuttle's systems and kill everyone inside. Maya fired. The conductive round lanced through the storm, following the electrical current straight to the storm wraith. When it struck the creature, it created a closed loop, a short circuit between the wraith and the massive electrical potential of the great ice storm itself. The storm wraith lit up like a star. Every part of its semi-transparent body became visible as more electrical energy than any living thing could contain flowed through it. The creature convulsed as billions of volts coursed through its form. It was being fed by the very storm it lived in, given more energy than it could possibly absorb or use. For a moment, the storm wraith was the brightest thing in the sky. It burned with light that hurt to look at. Then all at once its form began to break apart. The coherent structure that held it together failed. It dissolved into component particles that scattered through the storm clouds. The electrical discharge from the wraith's death washed over the shuttle. Every system went haywire. Sparks flew from control panels. The shields failed completely. The shuttle began to fall, tumbling through the storm without power or control. Maya was thrown back into the cabin as the shuttle spun. She hit the wall hard enough to see stars. The safety line went taut and then snapped under the stress. For a terrible moment, Maya thought they were going to die after all. They had completed the hunt but would not survive to deliver the proof. Then Kyle got the backup systems online. Emergency power flickered to life. He fought the controls, slowly bringing the tumbling shuttle back under some semblance of control. They were still falling, still descending through the storm, but at least they were not completely out of control anymore. "Did we get it?" Kyle shouted. "Tell me that worked." Maya pulled herself up from where she had fallen. Her whole body hurt. She was pretty sure she had cracked at least one rib in the impact. But she was alive. And through the viewport, she could see the dispersing particles of the storm wraith spreading through the clouds. "We got it," she confirmed. The collection device had automatically gathered atmospheric samples from the moment she had fired. Trace particles of the storm wraith's unique biology were captured in the filters. It was not much, but it would be enough proof for the council. Kyle piloted the damaged shuttle up and out of the storm. It took 20 minutes of careful flying, nursing the failing systems, but eventually they broke free of the great eye and climbed into calmer atmosphere. The Swift Arrow was waiting for them in orbit. They docked carefully, the shuttle limping into the bay with sparks still occasionally flying from damaged panels. Maya climbed out of the shuttle and immediately collapsed. Every part of her body was screaming in pain. The medical AI's voice was already scolding her about her vital signs and insisting she get to the medical bay immediately. "We did it," she said to Kyle. "All 5. We actually did it." Kyle was grinning despite looking exhausted and terrified. 5 for 5. In 72 hours. Well, 64 hours technically. You had time to spare. Maya laughed and then winced because laughing hurt her ribs. She looked at the 5 sample containers that represented the weekend's impossible hunts. The Void Serpent, the Crimson Leviathan, the Phase Hunter, the Slag Behemoth, the Storm Wraith. 5 creatures that had defeated the galaxy's best hunters, and she had killed them all in one weekend. They made the jump back to Station Kepler 9 with 8 hours remaining on the clock. As they approached the station, Maya forced herself out of the medical bay despite the AI's protests. She was going to walk into that council chamber on her own feet no matter how much it hurt. The crystal chamber was packed with aliens when Maya entered. Every council member was present. Dozens of other species had gathered to watch. The room fell silent as Maya walked to the center platform, carrying the 5 sample containers in a bag. She looked terrible. Her tactical gear was burned and torn. Her face was bruised. She moved like every step caused pain, but her eyes were clear and determined as she set the containers on the display platform one by one. Ambassador Vexthor approached slowly,